Welcome back to Next Gen Console Watch, our show following everything happening with the latest gaming hardware. I'm Damon Hatfield. I'm joined in studio this week by Nick Limon.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Lifetime PlayStation fan, big fan of Final Fantasy as well.
Huge Final Fantasy guy.
We're also joined by Ryan McCaffrey, host of IGN's Xbox podcast, Podcast Unlocked.
Always good to see you guys.
You as well, and I don't want to be melodramatic, but it feels like maybe we're standing on the precipice of some big changes in regards to Xbox's relationship with PlayStation. So, on the off chance that you're watching the show but haven't heard the latest news and all the discussion that's been happening, over last weekend, The Verge had a report that Indiana Jones and the Great Circle and Starfield are reportedly being considered for PS5, and this may indicate a new multi-platform approach inside Microsoft for certain Xbox games going forward. So, it's a source with knowledge of Microsoft plans has claimed the company is weighing up which titles will remain exclusive and others that will appear on Switch or PS5 in the future. Indiana Jones is seemingly part of this new plan, could be one of the first to kick off this new strategy if it ends up happening. Then, assuming this goes forward, Indiana Jones would be set to launch exclusively on Xbox and PC this December, and then would arrive on PS5 after a rather short period that could be just a few months later. The report also follows rumors that Hi-Fi Rush and Sea of Thieves would be jumping to other platforms as well, but that's not even all. Xbox Era reported that Starfield may be another game that is making its way to PS5. And so all of this would be an interesting report, I think, but what adds a lot of fuel to the fire for me is that Phil Spencer sort of addressed that a lot, that people were talking about this, and tweeted that he said, "We're listening, we hear you. We've been planning a business update event for next week where we look forward to sharing more details with you about our vision for the future of Xbox. Stay tuned." So, Ryan, this is a lot to unpack, a lot to get into here, but just what are sort of your first thoughts on all this?
Number one, Xbox's messaging continues to be horrible. They're constantly on their heels. They're constantly reactive instead of proactively telling everybody, our platform is awesome and here's why. It's always a reaction. Ever since the Xbox One unveiling, which was, of course, this giant disaster, It feels like it's like they got punched in the face and have never recovered from that in terms of the way they message the Xbox brand. Remember how confident the brand was in the 360 days? Where it's just like, we are kicking ass. We have all these great exclusives. We have all these great games. Here's why you should be on Xbox. Oh, we got Netflix. So it's like we're doing all kinds of stuff. Ever since then, it seems like it's always one step forward, one step back. And usually the step forward, they step on a rake and the rake hits them in the face. I'll give you a couple of examples. Last year, they do their first Xbox Developer Direct. Awesome. They show off some of the stuff they're working on. Holy cow, an awesome shadow-dropped game, Hi-Fi Rush from Tango Gameworks. IGN gives it a 9 out of 10. Everybody loves it. It's on Game Pass. It's great. And then just a couple months later, Redfall is this, we got to call it what it is. It was a disaster. It was a train wreck that was their first $70 game that they hyped up and they allowed everybody to believe was this next great game from Arcane, this great studio, and they absolutely should have seen what was coming, and they should have started to lower everybody's expectations accordingly. Because not every game is good. That's it's things happen, but if you're trying to make everybody think that it's going to be another 9 or 10 out of 10 game from Arcane, you've got to know, if you're the publisher, what's coming down the tracks. And then just this year, again, we just came off of the second Xbox Developer Direct, which was fantastic. We finally got that release date for Hellblade 2. Little mini bad news in there of it being digital only, which seems to be part of maybe a bigger conversation to be had another time. But another great Xbox Developer Direct, and now just one report after another as you went over, Daemon. So it inspires zero confidence in the brand, and Xbox gamers are pretty exhausted, pretty fed up. You've seen a lot of that in the online Xbox community this week. And for me, so I have a podcast receipt, people can go back and listen to it, where when the Hi-Fi Rush thing first broke, the rumors that was going to be heading to Switch, I publicly said, and I stand by it, that at the time, I didn't think that was too big a deal. That did not, it's like, okay, this is this is a smaller scale, and with all due respect, lower tier game. Not that it's not a great game, but it's not in the Indiana Jones or Starfield or Halo or Gears category. So it's a smaller scale game. Okay, if it's going to go to Switch in, after it's been out for over a year on Xbox, and it'll continue to be on Xbox for, basically for free if you've got a Game Pass subscription, fine. You've still got a great avenue to access that game if you haven't taken the opportunity over the past year already to play it. And then the Sea of Thieves thing, that rumor of it coming to PS5, all right, that's like a 6-year-old game. So live service, sure, it's still going, it's a strong game, but if you're, I don't know, that just, nothing about that could make me upset. But when it goes now to the blockbuster stuff, to the reasons that you would buy an Xbox, the reasons that you would invest in the ecosystem, when you start hearing Starfield's name thrown around, incredible reports, and you start seeing Indiana Jones, a game that's not even out yet, thrown around, incredible reports. There's other whispers, a little more unsubstantiated, that Gears of War could be part of this as well. That's where you start to go, all right, well, wait a second. Like, why am I investing in Xbox? And this is sort of the hypothetical like, this is not me personally necessarily. Sure. But why should I invest in Xbox if I could just buy a PS5, get all the really great exclusives that stay exclusive over there, and then eventually play these Microsoft games that are going to eventually come to the PlayStation platform? And, for some, the answer is, well, I don't know why. But for others, there's still a very good reason, and that's Game Pass. Game Pass continues to be a great deal that's, as of now, not going to be coming to PlayStation or Switch anytime soon, probably because those platform holders have no interest in allowing that. Maybe that changes someday, maybe it doesn't. So, and then there's still, you still have people that want to be in the Xbox ecosystem. I mean, speaking personally, I am of the opinion that the Xbox controller is by far the superior controller. It's the best controller ever made. DualSense and the PlayStation controllers have come a long way, but I still prefer to do my gaming on this. And you've got your friends list. You've got, there are reasons to be in the Xbox ecosystem, but when you start talking about the biggest games leaving the platform and going elsewhere, like, you start to wonder. So now there's a silver lining to this, potentially, that, or at least a possible happy outcome here, which I know we'll get to later. But I know I just went on for a while, but I hope that kind of sums it up. Issue.
Yeah, very thorough analysis, and I think explanation. So well done.
So like longtime Xbox supporters might feel, maybe betrayed is a harsh word, but maybe they're feeling something like that. But Nick, let's say you're a PlayStation fan, you own a PlayStation, you don't own an Xbox. All of a sudden now you have access to games like Indiana Jones and Starfield, even if it's months after Xbox fans enjoyed them. I don't see any downside for you.
Yeah, exactly. At the end of the day, this is a pro-consumer move, maybe just not pro-Xbox consumer news. But that said, like, it just feels like if you give people the ability to play your game on their specific hardware of choice, that's a win for the person who's spending the $70 at the end of the day. That said, this is kind of nutty behavior. I am not a businessman, so when Xbox acquired Bethesda, everyone's like, well, that just means, Starfield and the Elder Scrolls, those are going to be console and PC exclusives. Like, that means I'll never be able to play it on PlayStation. Well, apparently that's not going to be the case. Obviously, right now we're seeing the early rumblings of something like that, with Starfield potentially coming to PlayStation. But how much louder is the audience going to get? The people who do feel betrayed when suddenly the Elder Scrolls 6, which admittedly is still far away, but what happens when that is coming now to PlayStation? Now it's like, well, wait a second. I put all this money in my Xbox Series X or whatever it ends up being called by then, or my PC. Like, well, I feel, why do I even own this console?
But Ryan, if we've been listening to or paying attention to everything that Phil Spencer and Xbox has been saying in recent years, is all this really that surprising? Isn't this kind of where they've been headed all along?
Yes and no. It's not surprising in sort of the macro, but in the micro, I think it is, and I think it comes back to, as I mentioned again, and I'll use myself here. I will speak my own sort of truth here, and that's it's the blockbuster stuff. It's the AAA stuff. Why spend $8 billion on Bethesda if you're going to put Starfield on other platforms? Why put Elder Scrolls 6 on other platforms? There's that case to be made. But can I give you now the potential other side of this, Daemon?
Of course.
So we have to fairly ask ourselves, what if Microsoft's right? Mm-hmm. And the reason I say that is because there's data that suggests that the younger generations of gamers aren't as fiercely loyal to platforms as those of us in our 30s and 40s or beyond, where they just they've grown up with mobile phones all the time, including video games on those mobile phones, and they just want to play Fortnite on whatever device is most convenient to them at the time. Yeah. Whether it's at home, okay, I'll jump on my Xbox and play Fortnite there, or my PlayStation, or if I'm on the go, the Switch, or if I'm really on the go, then yeah, I'll play it on my phone. The younger generation might just be kind of tearing down the walls of the sort of platform expectations, and Microsoft is, they're the second company ever to become a $3 trillion market cap company, and that means they must have done some stuff right along the way. So they might be right about all this. Sony has masterfully played their hand the last two generations after screwing up the PS3 generation. That ever since they've made all the right moves. They've built this wonderful walled garden. If you're a PlayStation owner, it's like you've just had one banger after another of first-party exclusives, of some great third-party exclusives. Nick was, talking at the top, is Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is the next to those big third-party exclusives that's about to drop. They just did a state of play on it this week to show it off. But what if Sony's way is not long for this world? What if, you look at I think we've talked on this show, Damon, about how console growth in the macro, again, to kind of use that silly term that I'm not really qualified to use, is console growth's not really growing all that much. Mobile is what's growing. That's PC mobile is where the growth is. That's why Microsoft, they wanted King as much as they wanted Activision and Blizzard when they spent that $69 billion. And so there is a very plausible scenario that they're right, that what they're sort of doing right now in real time, even though they're messaging it horrifically, because when the head of the gaming division has to come out and be like, in effect, yeah, we hear you. Check back next week. Maybe we'll have something we can say to you then. The messaging's awful, but they might be right about the whole thing. They might not, but they might be right.
I certainly think you're onto something, Ryan. Yeah. Just because, I think you nailed it, right? The younger generation just wants to be able to play whatever game they want, whenever they want, how they want it. And I think we're seeing echoes of that in, the older generation, a la myself, ourselves, where, why would I want to pick up Persona 3 Reload on a PlayStation 5 when it's already included in my Game Pass subscription? And not just that, I can have it installed on my Xbox, I can have it installed on my PC, and I can also have it installed via my Steam Deck by streaming through the Xbox Game Cloud streaming on my Stream Deck and take it on the go. And when I get home, after I've been on a Wi-Fi, I can get home, transfer my save over to the PC version, and then continue to enjoy the game on my big TV. It's just the accessibility and ease of use of playing whatever game you want, whenever and however you want, I think beats everything, 100%.
And Ryan made another good point. Both PlayStation and Xbox share their exclusives with PC. Microsoft does it day and date for the first-party games into Game Pass. But PlayStation's whole playbook and persona over the past 2 generations is they are the home of the highest budget, most highly polished AAA prestige single player games, and then they keep those to themselves on consoles, right? And now we find ourselves in a position we're already in the second month of 2024. We have no idea what PlayStation's next big first party game is. They haven't announced it. There's no release date. So they have third-party exclusives, but nothing first-party. So
I think there's also an air of uncertainty too in regards to PC releases, at least from an Xbox perspective. I know, oh yeah, it's an Xbox first-party title. I'm going to be able to play that on PC Game Pass day one, no issues, and I'm going to be able to transfer saves without even not even a question. Whereas PlayStation, sure, they are releasing games on Steam. But I don't really understand the cadence of how they release anything. Like, we just got Last of Us Part 1. Horizon Forbidden West is coming later this month. And what about Ghost of Tsushima? Wasn't that supposed to come out a long time ago? It feels unreliable. It feels like, oh yeah, maybe we should throw a first-party PlayStation title on Steam. I will never know when that is the case. So there is a sense of reliability from Xbox in that regard.
And you know, Daemon, it's I think one way to maybe wrap our brains around this is that to say that Xbox Game Pass is the console now. As weird as that might sound. I don't mean it literally, obviously, but in effect, Game Pass is the console, not the Series X, not the Series S. It's Game Pass, and it's wherever Game Pass lives. That's what Xbox is. Whether that's on a PC or, Game Pass, again, probably not going to come to PlayStation or Switch anytime soon. But it does seem like that's more the platform than anything else. And this potential third-party opening of the door, multi-platform opening of the doors is kind of a logical extension of that. Again, is it going to work? Is it the right move? We don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But I do feel like they've been heading this way for a while as they've built up Game Pass and finally, started to build up a ton of first-party output that they can put right in there. They've had a ton of great third-party exclusives, or not exclusives, but day one Game Pass games. But yeah, I feel like Game Pass is the console now, more so than the Series X or the Series S.
Yeah, and I would totally get it if they're internally. Xbox, we know that Xbox console sales have been rather slow. So internally, they're like, well, we can share our exclusives with PC and sell games there, but there's a hard limit on how many games we can sell on Xbox. It's finite. So if we spread it around a little bit more, it makes perfect sense in that respect. But Nick, if you put on your PlayStation fan hat for a moment, if Sony announced tomorrow that Spider-Man 2, it's coming to Xbox in a couple months, do you feel like you've lost something? That bother you?
I don't really have that sort of like platform loyalty in that sense, but I was like, yeah, it's a digital property, whatever. It can go to another console. I don't care. But at the end of the day, it all goes back to feeling like I think the consumer maybe gets short shrifted, right? Because when I buy a PlayStation, I can expect Final Fantasy games on it. I can expect Spider-Man games on it. I can expect your prestige third-person action over-the-shoulder style cinematic experiences. So I can understand if I just spent $500 on a PlayStation 5. Yeah, I'd probably be a little bit upset that, well, why did I do that? Because you're now just giving me reasons to no longer spend money with you. So yeah, I guess I could consider being a little salty in that regard.
Yeah, I think what you're getting at, Nick, is that by Sony continually delivering you a bunch of great first and third party exclusives, you feel like they've reciprocated the loyalty that you've shown them as a customer by spending hundreds and thousands of dollars in their ecosystem over, multiple generations. And Xbox has been around for over 20 years, and there are a lot of Xbox consumers and fans that have spent thousands and thousands of dollars in that ecosystem over time. And if this strategy is real, as we're seemingly going to learn next week what the deal is, I think a lot of Xbox fans might feel like that the loyalty that they have shown Microsoft as customers is no longer being reciprocated.
Well, it'll be very interesting to see what Phil Spencer has to say about the future of the Xbox business next week. We will be looking forward to that, and then we'll be discussing whatever it is announced and laid out for us on this show next week. Got the poll from last episode. We wanted to know, what was your favorite game from the recent PlayStation State of Play? Unsurprisingly, Death Stranding 2, On the Beach.
Wow.
But surprisingly, number 2 was Rise of the Ronin with 30% of the vote. And I'm surprised. I think that game looked cool, but there was a lot of discussion about how a lot of people were saying it looks like a PS3 game.
Oh, I think that's unfair to say.
I think so too.
Especially when you're watching, you got to consider live stream bit rates. It's never going to look as good as it actually does when you're playing it in front of you. And also, that game looks impressive as hell when you're flying around and seamlessly transitioning to ground transport. That game is next gen as hell. That is ridiculous.
A new poll for you to vote on for next episode. Would you buy an Xbox console if it only had timed exclusives? Maybe you just love the Xbox ecosystem, so you're always going to want to play on Xbox. Or no, maybe no true console exclusives is a deal breaker for you. Make sure to vote at IGN.com the day this episode goes live. We'll share the results with you next episode. And that's going to do it for this edition of Next Gen Console Watch. Thank you to both Nick and Ryan. Thank you to Joe and Ryan and everyone working behind the scenes to make this episode possible. My name is Daemon. We'll be back next week with more news on the latest gaming hardware. We'll see you then.